Welcome back, creator. This is Corey Anderson, and we are about to go over chapter 8 of our lovely book, How to Stay Young by Christian D. Larson. We are excited about going over this chapter with everybody. In the last chapter and all the chapters that we had gone before, he's kind of repeating himself in different ways. But he's really trying to get the main point across that when we bring our mind in subjection to living in the here and now, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, thinking about and living in the presence of here and now, and the fact that we're not living with the idea that we're getting older every single year, because we understand that the body is renewing itself. It's no more than a year old on average, and that whatever the mind thinks, that if the mind thinks it's old, then it's going to produce old age conditions and express itself as being old within the body. Now remember, the body is a system of nothing but chemical reactions. Whatever thoughts we think sets those reactions within our bloodstream. If we're thinking stressful and we're thinking a bunch of negative thoughts, our body responds to that by our brain will begin to release hormones. Our endocrine glands will release hormones from the bloodstream, making us feel bad. The hormone cortisol, and cortisol breaks down the tissues of the body. Remember the power the conscious portion of the mind has over the subconscious, and the conscious deals with the power of thought. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, and I want to go ahead and start this video with the quote by, I believe it is from Socrates, and he says, "Don't waste your time and energy on fighting the old. Instead, spend all your time and energy on creating the new." So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So chapter 8, why experience produces age when its real purpose is to perpetuate youth. To live is to think is to act, and to act is to produce experience. Experience must therefore invariably follow the expression of every process of life. To live is to live more, because living produces experience, and experience opens the mind to the newer, the larger, and the greater. Experience is also that thing that we need to pay attention to even let us know that if our thinking is correct, that if our mental states are correct. Because if we keep experiencing something that is creating unhappiness and harmony in our life, then that must change. I was talking just in my last video about marijuana and smoking weed, and when it's a bad habit and it's just out of control and you're just doing it all the time and you're just constantly in a new state of mind, and you don't give your mind a chance to be subtle and to really operate from the reality of things. We were created to be subtle. We weren't created to be high all the time. When we do that, we have an experience in when it's an experience that you outgrow, it no longer serves you in your life. You have to move on. You have to move on, or else you'll just stay there, and you'll stay trapped because you're no longer that person. You've grown out of it. To gain experience is to gain wisdom, power, and a larger field of conscious action. And since the enlargement of the field of conscious action is the direct cause of the renewal of mind, the perpetual youth of mind must invariably follow the perpetual gain of experience. The gain of experience, however, is continuous, because while life continues, the gain of experience will continue. The perpetual renewal of mind will perpetuate the youth of the entire personality, and since the inherent the inherent tendency of experience is to renew the mind, the real purpose of experience must be to perpetuate youth. And when we have those experiences we were talking about is very unpleasant, it brings us into finding a new way of living, a better way of living. So we no longer have to live through that that hell that we keep creating for ourselves. To perpetuate youth in a complete sense is to promote the growth, the development, and the advancement of everything of the being in the being of man. And to gain experience is to gain the elements of advancement. Therefore, the tendency of experience is inseparably connected with the tendency of life to advance itself, renew itself, and perpetuate its own youth. So what he's saying is the experience that we have is there to indicate whether we're doing something right or whether we're doing something wrong. If we have a negative experience, then we need to change something about what we're employing. Remember, it's cause and effect. We set the cause in motion for a lot of things. And we also experience and reap the effects. The gain of experience will produce two opposing tendencies in mind, depending upon the use that is made in the mental elements produced by the experience. The one is a tendency towards a feeling of maturity. The other is a tendency towards a feeling of conscious expansion. Wow. Because like we were just talking about, the experiences in which we meet in life is going to determine, the decisions that we even make with the choices that we make. If you decide to do something and you have a negative experience from it, then you don't want to keep doing that, because if you do, you might keep experiencing that negative experience. And what he's saying here is that depending on the use that is made of the mental elements produced by the experience, depending on how the individual thinks and takes the experience, will determine. The one is a tendency towards a feeling of maturity, the other is a tendency towards a feeling of conscious expansion. Their thought towards the experience will determine whether they will advance towards maturity, towards maturing more, or to where they will expand towards to expand more consciously, to be more aware. When the mind thinks of development as a process having a definite end in view, the mental elements produced by experience will be used for the purpose of bringing this end into realization. And as this end is being approached, the mind feels that it is being matured. The feeling of maturity tends to retard further advancement, because further advancement is not supposed to be possible where maturity has taken place. It's amazing that he says that, because we have to always understand that we never really grow fully in one direction, that there is always continuous advancement, and there's always room for growth, because the moment we continue to believe that we know everything or that we know it all, then we'll cease to stop growing, because we think we know it all. We'll act as know-it-alls. We'll become know-it-alls. And that's the last thing we want, because once you move into that state of being, you start to decrease, because you're no longer learning, you're no longer open to new information, and we're learning things every day. Therefore, the mind that permits the feeling of maturity to act in the system will cause a maturing process to be placed in action throughout the system. And as a maturing process is gaining ground, the advancing process is losing ground. Now, during this entire paragraph, like the last four main sentences, the first two words is completely blocked out. So we're going to do our best to complete those sentences. But it starts as saying, the gradual suspension of growth in one part depends upon the other part. Or the gradual suspension of growth in one part affects the other will be the result. One part, the other will be the result. Yeah, it's amazing how just one simple word can change the entire meaning of a sentence. The gradual suspension of growth in one part, the other will be the result. The growth in the other part will be the result, and that which ceases to grow will begin to grow old. When the mind thinks of development as being perpetual, as being when the mind thinks of development as being perpetual, I think that might be what it is. There will be no doubt of any end. There will be no thought of any end. So I know this paragraph isn't exactly like the sentences aren't entirely there, or the first word is being cut off. But basically, what he's saying in this sentence, in this paragraph, is what he's been saying throughout the entire book. In thinking young, thinking positive, not thinking old. The mind thinks of development as being perpetual. There will be no thought of any end. Every step in advance will be looked upon as a step towards more advancement. The feeling of maturity will therefore be eliminated completely. To think of every experience as being an open door to a larger mental world is to cause every experience to produce the feeling of conscious expansion. And what the mind feels it is doing, it is doing. The inherent purpose of every experience is to produce conscious expansion, and so long as this expansion is perpetual, the renewal of mind will be perpetual. In consequence, youth will be perpetual, but this inherent purpose of experience is interfered by the process of maturity. Because he's saying when a person believes they're mature, or if they stop growing in a specific spot because of their feeling of being mature in that area, they cease to expand and they'll begin to grow old. They'll move in the opposite direction. The maturing process, however, is not natural. It is the result of wrong states of mind, being a direct contradiction to the growing process, which is natural. The maturing process has an end view in mind because they believe that they've reached it, they've made it. It is the result. Okay, I just read that one. The maturing process has an end in view and intends to cease action when that end is reached. The growing process has no end in view and does not intend to cease action at any time. The growing process does not think of the finished product. It simply thinks of growing now. Therefore, perpetuates the force of growth now, which is exactly what we're doing at this very state of our life. Because I don't know everything. As much as I thought I might have, there's hardly anything that I know. That we need to keep expanding as a consciousness. We need to keep growing as a mind. We need to keep reading. We need to keep moving forward. We need to show you guys that, hey, it's possible. So you guys can see me in the road I took, in the amount of hours and hours and hours of studying and practicing and going over this within myself and experiencing it and seeing it happen and observing it in the outer world and happening around me and watching it happen for those around you. We're going to get there, Corey. You're going to get there. No matter what, we're going to get there. We just need to keep putting energy into it. Because we're in the process of growth. In the true order of things, nothing is ever finished. What seems to be finished is but an introduction to something still greater that is to follow. And the process of growth works ceaselessly through all these stages of advancement. It is therefore evident to think of maturity and expect maturity. It is to introduce false process in the human system. And as the maturing process does have a tendency to retard natural growth, it will prevent the natural renewing process of the system from the perpetuating the youth of the body. The reason why experience tends to produce age in the average person is, according to this analysis, clearly discerned in the fact that the race lives in the belief that experience produces mental maturity. And since the condition of maturity suspends growth, age must follow, because that which ceases to grow must grow old. The conditions of age is simply a condition of retarded or suspended growth. It is a condition whereby development has ceased, and wherein retrogression and decay has begun, or are about to begin. But it is not possible, however, for retrogression or decay to take place anywhere in the system so long as growth, development, and advancement are in action. Where progress is in action, retrogression is impossible, and where there is growth, there can be no decay. Therefore, the promotion of interrupted growth and continuous advancement in the human system will eliminate every condition of age, and in consequence, youth will be perpetual. Youth will be perpetuated. You will express that. You will become that. The law of perpetual renewal provides for continuous growth and advancement in every part of the system, and experience opens the mind to larger fields of action, thereby giving the process of growth the opportunity to promote the development of the human system in an ever-enlarging scale. Now, the biggest tool that any of us has, you and me, the biggest tool that we have in order to making something like this an actual reality in our life is our very own mind. It is our mind. We live in a world of constant motion. Everything is continuously moving. If you're not moving forward, you're moving back. There is no standing still. And where progression is in action, retrogression is impossible. And where there is growth, there can be no decay. Therefore, the promotion of interrupted growth and continuous advancement of the human system will eliminate every condition of age. In consequence, youth will be perpetual. The law of perpetual renewal provides for continuous growth and advancement in every part of the system, and experience opens the mind to larger fields of action, thereby giving the process of growth the opportunity to promote the development of the human system in an ever-enlarging scale. In this plan, there is no place given to the aging process. Therefore, the aging process will never enter the system unless it is produced by man himself through the violation of these fundamental laws in nature. And he violates these laws of nature through his own thinking. The inherent purpose of experience is expressed through one of the most important of these laws. To comply with this law, the mind should be trained to act in harmony with the purpose of experience. This may be accomplished by causing the conscious mind to think of every experience as a path to greater things, and by causing the subconscious mind to feel the expanding, growing, advancing tendency of every experience. The subconscious mind should be daily impressed with the fact that every experience has an expanding, growing, advancing tendency. Ere long, this inner purpose of experience will be subconsciously felt, and thereafter the subconscious mind will act in harmony with the tendency of experience. The conscious mind should expect every experience to open the way to the new, and should confidently live in the very soul of that expectation. In consequence, all the forces and faculties of the conscious mind will move with the tendency of experience, the tendency to enter the new, and will thereby constantly enter into the new. When the conscious mind is ever entering the new, and the subconscious mind is constantly acting in harmony with the expanding, advancing tendency, the perpetual renewing process will be promoted throughout the entire personality. The perpetuation of youth must invariably follow, because every condition of maturity and suspended growth will entirely disappear. When the mind feels the conditions of maturity, these conditions will be expressed in every part of the system, especially in the face, where the expressions of mind are the strongest. The conditions of maturity invariably produce the appearance of age. It is therefore evident that the unnatural tendency to mature is one of the principal causes of the aging process. The growing mind, however, does not mature. The more the growing mind develops, the more it finds to develop, and the stronger becomes its desire to work out the new possibilities that are constantly being discovered. Such a mind never feels matured, nor gives expression to maturity, nor can anything come to a standstill and ossify in the personality of such a mind. The average person, after having passed through a great deal of experience, feels old and worn because he has looked upon experience as a wearing process instead of as a process of renewal, growth, and advancement. Excuse me. Sorry. In consequence, he looks old and worn and is gradually placing his entire system under the complete influence of the aging process. simply because he chooses not to learn from his experience. Experience implies action, and action, as ordinarily expressed, uses up energy. Therefore, it is believed that much experience will produce a worn, wearied condition. But the ordinary expression of action does not apply the true purpose of action. Results, worn and wearied conditions are for that reason abnormal. The true purpose of action is to place in action more and more of the stored up energy of the system, and as experience tends to enlarge the sphere of action, it is a foregone conclusion that experience, when not interfered with, will invigorate both body and mind, or mind and body. When each action in the human systems tends to place more stored up energy in action, the power and the capacity of the system will naturally increase, and such results may be secured from every action when the mind is trained to think of every action not as a wearing process, but as a building process. To train the mind to use every experience, that is, every group of new actions for the purpose of awakening potential power. It is to promote the real purpose of experience, because the perpetual renewal of the entire system demands a constant increase in the expression of life. Now, another way to put that is, as we had said before, once we go through an experience that isn't quite as pleasant as we want it to be, and if we keep going through, if we keep taking an action and we keep experiencing an experience that we're not satisfied with, that we're not happy with, we need to stop taking that action and we need to engage our mind into something else. Because what did Albert Einstein say? You know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We can't just keep bringing our mind and letting some external element get into our mind and affect us, because it is in here. This is the workshop. This is where everything is created and formed and molded to be expressed and created into the external world. And our experiences are here to help us to choose to grow and to experience something better in life, because we need to learn how to set the right causes in motion to produce the effects of which we desire. When the mind thinks of every experience as a developing and enlarging process, there will be no tendency in experience to produce conditions of maturity or age, but every experience will be left free to promote its own inherent purpose, which is to perpetuate the new by ever and ever opening the mind to the new. The action of every experience tends to produce an impression upon the mind, and the result of this impression will depend upon the mental attitude towards experience while the impression was being made. To form these impressions with the greatest of care is highly important, because these impressions determine the nature of thought, and man is as he thinks. Those impressions that are fixed in their nature will tend to produce stationary conditions in the system, and such conditions invariably become old age conditions. Impressions, however, that are created with an inherent desire to reproduce themselves and enlarge themselves will originate advancing thought. That is, thought will work in harmony with the natural renewing process, and thus perpetuate the elements of youth. To simply, quote, pass through, end quote, experience is to impress consciousness with the idea of wear and tear, and this idea, as it forms itself into conditions, will age the personality. When passing through experience, the mind should aim to, quote, pass out, end quote, of the experience that is produced by experience. This effort will impress consciousness with the idea of advancement, and advancing ideas are always rejuvenating. To pass out of experience while passing through experience is to increase the power of the ascending tendency of thought, and such thought not only perpetuates youth, but also develops the faculties of the mind. To think of every experience as a passing out of the lesser into the greater is the accurate thought to form concerning the nature, the tendency, and the purpose of experience, simply because this form of thinking, this method of thinking, is directed towards continuous growth. When we understand that all the experiences that we've had in our life is there to help us continue to grow. That when we know that when we have that negative experience, as we've been saying, we know what to do or what not to do to avoid having that experience again. And we can take that energy that we put into manifesting that in our life in order to put into something else, to manifest something better, and to experience something even better within our lives. There must be no settling down into grooves, nor must anyone think that he is entitled to fixed ideas and final conclusions because he has had an abundance of experience. There are no final conclusions. Every demonstrated fact simply demonstrates the fact that every fact begins to evolve into new and different facts the very moment it has been passed through its demonstration. There are no fixed ideas. An idea to be an idea must be a growing idea. What we call fixed ideas are simply ossified thoughts. They are not alive, therefore have no truth in them. Now there is some truth to that statement, but I can see that there is not really too much truth to that statement at all, because we do also have those ideas that we do need to hold on to. We have those ideas that we must hang on to, because that idea within itself is the truth. Whether if it's a growing idea or not, the idea of holding the truth is going to help you grow, but if it's a false idea, it's not going to help you grow. And fixed ideas aren't simply ossified thoughts. Sure, the more you think a thought along a specific line, the more you're building those grooves within your mind, but that's exactly what you want when it's a correct way of thinking. We want facts. We want only facts. What we call fixed ideas are simply ossified thoughts. They are not alive, therefore have no truth in them. The mind that has had an abundance of experience should know that he has just begun to deal with real ideas, that there are universes before him still to be explored and comprehended, and that the experience he has had thus far is mere insignificance compared with that or with what is yet in store for advancing human thought. To gain these greater ideas, a man must enter into harmony with the real purpose of experience and begin to live solely for continuous advancement. While so living, he will also perpetuate his youth. Now that is the end of chapter 8 of our lovely book, How to Stay Young by Christian D. Larson. This one was entitled Why Experience Produces Age When Its Real Purpose is to Perpetuate Youth. And now that we've actually gone through the chapter and we read back, now we know why he has entitled this chapter as such. Because if we summarize what we have talked about, the main points that we have gotten is when we experience something, this experience will either cause the soul to grow in maturity, in the thought of their being mature, or that they are mature, and that they already know a lot about a certain subject, which is a thought that we don't want to have, because that'll perpetuate and start growing, that'll create old age conditions in our life. Once we begin to believe we know things, and we believe we know everything about something, we stop growing in that area. Okay, and the second stage that experience brings into mind, will bring the mind to, is to perpetuate its youth. When the mind experiences something that's not exactly pleasant or that it doesn't like, it has to choose to what it can do to change it, so it looks for how it could perpetuate its youth through its experience. And the way to do that is by how we've learned, by the process of thinking, because thinking or thought is the seed which forms all of action. We have to think of it before we can take action. If you're hungry and you want a chocolate cake, you have to first think of eating that delicious chocolate cake, and it has to first be a conception within your mind before you go out there and take action to actually going out there and eating that delicious chocolate cake. So with that being said, I'm pretty sure this thing is still recording. I'm just signing myself back into my computer. And if you made it to this video, thank you so much for watching. We're working on ourselves. We're working on our dream. If you have a dream, you got to do it. You got to go for it. And you just got to get out there and you got to put energy into it. Remember, it doesn't matter how many people are following you. It doesn't matter how any of that. You have to become that. You have to work at that. And you have to be that person necessary before it could actually manifest in your life. Because when you're really ready for it, it'll happen. It'll happen. Just continue to believe it and keep seeing it in here. Because remember, if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching to the end this video. And you're great. Remember our daily affirmations that we are the lights of the world, you and me. And together, we can make a difference in this world. Take care.